So, good morning and welcome. Just so I want to make sure you know you're all in the right spot, this is the discussion about Abraham's tent, and today we're talking about, since we know a little bit more than we used to about Judaism and Islam, now we're within Abraham's tent talking about, in these times in our world, what can we do to work together to advance our common, boy, I'm really on now, advance our common goals. And I want it to be a discussion, but I'll start by asking our folks here some questions that we'll get some answers from, and then kind of open it up. And if we don't get to even two of our three questions, that's okay, because that means we'll have some discussion. So I first want to introduce Barbara Campbell, who is pastor at St. Mark's Presbyterian Church. You all know her, but you may not know that she's been extremely active in the interfaith community in the region, and comes from that perspective, and has worked with Bruce Morris, or I should say Baruch Morris. I have to learn how to spit better. I'm just too much of a shiksa. Anyway, so Bruce Morris has been my friend for 30 years or more, and is my kind of go-to person, other than my husband, my go-to person for all questions Jewish. And he's a senior cantorial student at the Aleph Ordination Program, and has served as cantor and spiritual leader for Pnei Or of Portland. And coincidentally, Pnei Or rents space from St. Mark's Presbyterian. So hence there's a connection there. And then my other person here, our other person up here is Al Houdroge. Did I say your name right? Ali, I'm sorry. It says that right there. I'm a little nervous. I'll calm down here pretty soon. Ever since last night, for some reason, it's been, I'll breathe. And Ali is one of the founders of the Islamic Center in Portland, which is coincidentally right across the street from Southminster Presbyterian in Beaverton, which is my home church. And that's the only Shia center in Oregon and Southwest Washington. He was born and raised in Lebanon. Now, I grew up in Albany, Oregon, so I have to tell a story on myself. I read his resume, and he said he was born in Lebanon. And I wrote back and I said, oh, oy vey, what was that like? Growing up in Lebanon, being Muslim, I mean, you must have really struggled. And he wrote back this, anyway, kind of didn't really tell me in this email that I was all wrong and being really foolish, that he was from the country, Lebanon. And then when I finally was putting these bios together to be able to introduce them, I reread it and I thought, oh, God, I do have blonde hair sometimes. So anyway, so Ali came to the States in 1971, graduated from Portland State and in electrical engineering, and then worked for the Corps of Engineers for over 31 years. And he is Muslim. He's been Muslim his entire life, and we'll learn more about that as we continue the discussion. So thank you all for coming. I think we're also being tapped online, and I know last time we almost doubled our attendance by who came in online. So welcome if you're online too. So I thought what I would do is, oh, maybe I should do that. Thank you. So I'm June Carlson. I'm a ruling elder from Southminster Presbyterian in Beaverton, and I've had the privilege and the honor of being the moderator for Presbytery for this last year. And this is my last meeting as moderator. So tomorrow afternoon, we'll switch the gavel to someone else. Thank you for that reminder. So what I would like to do is ask kind of starter questions. And really my intent with this session was, in our country right now and the world, it's a little tense. Maybe that's an understatement. And I think that the more we get to know people who are different than us, the easier it is to be kind to people and to befriend them and to work together, and to not focus on our differences, but to focus on those things for which we are alike. And you know, we are all human beings, and we have a lot alike. We have blood and hearts anyway. So but I digress. So I'm gonna start with my first question here, and you guys can wrestle who starts it. So from your perspective of doing interfaith work in the community, what is our overall goal that we might accomplish working together? What do you want to accomplish, and what's your vision of our future? Short question.
Sure. So I think in everything that we do, our overall goal is to learn more, to learn more about each other, to learn more about the world in which we live. So that's sort of the overarching goal, is just knowledge and understanding to enrich our lives. For me, it's a bit like watching a beautiful kaleidoscope, you know, of webs and designs that fit together. They're different, and as you turn it, it's different, but it all fits together. The goal is not that we would meld into one religion, all the same religion. First of all, that would be very boring, I think, and we would never think of melding all the cultures of the world into one culture, with one language and all the same traditions and stories. And it's the same with religious traditions. We're not talking about learning how alike we are so that down the road we all become one group. And for instance, a wise rabbi told me years ago that each of the three Abrahamic traditions have a unique role to play in the world as well. Judaism is the religion that holds the importance of ancestry, the ancient story of creation and community, and holds that for us, remembers it, continues to tell it. That's Judaism's role. Christianity's role was to discover the importance of taking the message of a loving creator into the whole world. Our evangelistic nature as Christians is a special role that we have among faith traditions. And Islam, for me at least, is a religion that focused back, following Judaism and Christianity, that focused back on the importance of peace and tolerance and being one creation under one God, but the importance of honoring each other and building peace. So we each have a different sort of flavor that we wouldn't want, and a unique role that needs to be maintained. Go ahead. You say more.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. So I have to say, first of all, that I feel like just want to make sure we can hear. I feel like I'm a little bit preaching to the choir. Not because I'm also a choir director, but because by the very fact that you're in this room, you've already taken the step to say, oh, there are others out there and I want to know more. So, to me, the overall goal of doing this work is to stop the kinds of things that probably don't happen to most of you in this room, but happen to me, and I'm sure happened to Ali. And I am not actually talking about overt acts of hatred, really quite the opposite. So when I was in my 20s, I took a bicycle trip across the United States. And we stopped for a couple of days in Tribune, Kansas. There are no Jews in Tribune, Kansas. And when I was at the 4-H fair, I had somebody walk around me like this. Now, what were they doing? They were looking, no, because I did. somebody said, oh, they're looking at my kippah, and I didn't wear a kippah in those days, at least not all the time. They were looking for the horns, right? Because there's that mistranslation about, Moses had horns, so Jews have horns. And my hair, I had a big Jew fro in those days, so it was kind of hard to tell if they were really in there or not. By the way, everybody knows that's a mistranslation. It's a homonym, same word, same sound, different meaning. It was the rays of light that were coming into Moses' head, but it's the same, sounds like the word for horn. So that's where that comes from in Hebrew. In any case, those are the kinds of things by sometimes well-meaning, but people who don't understand what's going on. So I'll tell you another story, which happened just recently. I was in a hot tub on vacation, and it was just after the election. And this fellow, I don't know who he voted for, but I can tell you is more conservative than I am. And we were having a discussion about what happened, why was the polling so far off, what were people really voting for. It was really quite the discussion. Talked about what I did in the world and what he was doing in the world, and then he says to me, well, Jews are controlling the media, and Jews control Hollywood.
Oh, of course.
And I was so taken aback, I didn't even know what to say. It was totally unexpected within the realm of this conversation. Now, this is not an evil person. I don't think this is an anti-Semitic person. But that's what he heard, and that's what he knew of Jews. And that's what he assumed. Now, you can say, because it's true, Jews are overrepresented in Hollywood. There are a lot of Jews in Hollywood compared to the general population of this country. Jews do not control Hollywood. Jews do not control the media. Believe me, I know that. I see lots of stuff that can't be. But I think that's part of our goal. And I have to say that I fell down there too. I needed a ready answer, and I could not say anything. And so I think that's part of what we need to be doing, is to be able to say, when you encounter that, it's not evil, but I think that's how evil arises, when you don't say something. And I didn't know what to say. I got an answer now, but I didn't that day. That, I actually think, is the goal of our work. To be familiar and to be able to say, that's not the case. Let's look at this.
First of all, I would like to greet you with the traditional Islamic greeting, Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you all.
Alaikum salam.
Steve,
Yeah, there you go.
can that microphone be turned up, Steve?
Yeah,
gonna
it's
slip off
working,
the
yeah.
table.
I think the aim and goal is not really different from what Barbara and Bruce has mentioned. And these days, I think the burden is really on the Muslims really to explain themselves because of all the news and all the terrorist activities that takes place. And our aim is really simple, really to make the people understand the true situation and true Islam, rather than hearing about misconception, as Bruce mentioned, or some misleading information that people have in their mind that they either heard from people or heard from the media, things like that. Sorry to say that sometimes the media really plays a bad role, for political aim or anything like that. So, and as a community in Beaverton, we really concentrate on really reaching out. Because when we got our conditional use permit to have really a community center in that area, we have to meet with the neighborhood association. That's part of the conditional use permit. And some people came and said, what makes us sure that you guys are not really a sleeping cell, something like that. And I'm glad to hear that some people, they protested these expressions. And our center is actually open, and we got really many calls, people asking about Islam, and they asking questions about what about this and that, and we like to explain. And I've been to many churches actually, from Tualatin to even Happy Valley. Even I was here twice actually at the Tabor. And so people, when they hear really the explanation, from us, they really have complete different opinion, So that's why I advise many people. I said, if you really want to know about certain religion or certain person, go directly to that person asking the question, rather than getting the answers from somebody that claims that they know about this and they're really expert and things like that. Just like the experts that you hear on the media sometimes saying, okay, they knew few Arabic words and they say, this is jihadis, this is this and that. They know a couple words, so they think they are experts now. So the best thing is really come directly and ask the question, is this true, is this thing? And then you will hear the answer, the proper answer. I'm not gonna, say, well, the Jews can do this or does that, or the Christian the same thing. No, I have really to learn from them what they do. Although Muslims, they really know about Jews and Christianity, And in our Quran, it encourages people. It says in the Quran that we created you from different races. We created you with different tongues, meaning different languages, so that you meet with each other and learn from each other. So that's what the message. And the message of Islam is really no different than Judaism or Christianity. The morality of the religion is really the basic things. Some people that are misled or they're misinterpreted the religion sometimes, give the religion bad names and things. If a Christian commits certain things, I'm not going to label Christianity as a terrorist. Same thing with Judaism or Islam. So this is really the idea, is really to ask the question, go to the source, and find out. And that's what really our aim is. And by the way, we have an open center, it's open to anybody. And we have lots of visitors from different colleges. They come because they take comparative religion. And tonight we have really big evening event at our center. We are honoring the heroes of Portland who defended the two girls, Muslim girls. And so we invited lots of people, and we're honoring them for gifts and certificates. And you are invited to come too. Thank you.
What time does that start?
That starts at 7:30.
Okay.
And there's free dinner too. So that's
then
iftar,
I'll be
breaking
there.
the fast.
I hate to say that our meeting isn't going to be over at 7:30, but so I'm going to kind of combine these two questions and say, one, what obstacles do we need to overcome, and what ideas do you have to advance our common agendas? So it's what positive can we do and what might be a challenge to doing that.
No, I can.
And then, when you guys are done, I'm going to open it up for a discussion. If questions or comments, please. Bruce.
So I think one of the major obstacles is actually a major obstacle that faces all religion in this era, which is, it's not a question of how do you put more butts in the seat. And that's how we phrase it. But how do you make this whole idea more attractive and more, dare I say it, fun? Because there are so many things which compete for our attention and our time in the modern era. You can say that's true in all eras, but it seems to be especially acute now. And I say that because I think there are so many things we could be doing But honestly, on a nice Friday morning, if I had a choice to go take my dog down to the river or be here, you know, where would I
Bruce.
be? I'm here, obviously. But I think that that's an issue. One of the things that I know there's a problem for Jews in particular, we are facing what many have called an intermarriage crisis. And what happens is when Jews intermarry, they tend not to have Jewish households. But I'm going to also tell you that it goes the other way too, because if they intermarry, they tend not to have Christian households if they intermarry with a Christian, or Muslim households if they intermarry with a Muslim. What tends to happen is religion goes by the wayside. I think our biggest challenge, both doctrinally and just from a space of personal gut, is what do we do in a pluralistic society when my own children married non-Jews? How do I deal with that? How do I make them welcome? How do I say to them, what will you do to put God in your household without putting a guilt trip on them that says, and it better be a Jewish-looking God? If I, as clergy, cannot do that, I'm not quite sure how I would expect you as lay people to do that either. And to me, that is the biggest challenge. If we really claim that we want to be a pluralist society, then how do I deal with the fact that my kids are unlikely to marry Jews because that's not who they met during their years when they were at that time when your hormones say, you are my partner. I think that's one of the most major challenges. The other piece is, you know, there's the church camp out, right? We've all been on one, I think. Why don't we do that, not just a church camp out, but with the local synagogue or the local mosque? We all do these things together. Why don't we learn to play together? It's very difficult to do religion together because it becomes so foreign. If you come to a service of mine, there's going to be a lot of Hebrew and you're going to be lost and bored. But what if we all went and, you know, got a group campsite on the beach and played for a weekend? To me, those are the kinds of things we can be doing that are fun, that put, well, maybe it's not butts in the pew, but it's butts in the outdoor circle, right? It's butts on the log, right? I mean, there are things that we can be doing that are fun, that are exciting, and that where we would be together and not, you know, I'm so grateful that I've been invited to Ramadan, and it's the only time I head over to the mosque, right? You know, so I feel like I'm something of a bad guest. I only come when you are the most busy. Can't we do this at a time when it's not the high holidays, or it's not Passover, or it's not Christmas, or you know what I'm trying to say? When it's a time when we all aren't involved in our own holiday and we can just be humans. That, to me, is the way we move forward.
I think the most difficult thing really is really to bring the misunderstanding together and eliminate it slowly, you know, by knowledge, by talking to each other. Many times we are hesitant to talking to somebody because we are afraid he might not speak English. If some people look at me, you know, or hear me, or, you know, so they are really hesitant to talk because they are afraid that I might not really speak English or anything. And I have seen funny videos on YouTube for Asian people, you know, talking to them slowly, you know how it is, you know, take the picture, so they don't really understand. But just be a little bit courageous and talk to them and see the difference. There's really a big difference when you talk to them. I know we have certain differences between the three religions and things like that, although we all came from the same source, you see, and all human beings came from the same Adam and Eve, you know, but still we have some differences and we are really conservative into talking to each other or anything. So the best thing is really to talk each other and concentrate on the common things and try really to understand the position, you know, of each person, where they stand, and respect that. And that this is really most important. And, especially for Muslims, it's very important really to explain themselves and reach out. Reaching out is very important, rather than isolating yourself and just be in the closet or confined to only your community and not really going out and talk. Because how can people judge you if they don't really know how you behave and what kind of person you are? So this is really very important for us, really to talk to people, let them understand, and as I mentioned before, try to clarify these misconceptions. Unfortunately, even among the Muslims or Christian and Jews, there are conflicts even about their religion too. You see, that's why actually the Prophet said the Islam and Christianity and Judaism, they are going to be separated on about 70 groups, so that they have conflicts or different opinions and things like that. So this is a human nature, and all we have to do is just talk to each other and concentrate on the common things with us, and I think that's really the best solution.
My two brothers have said two of the things that were on my list of three. One obstacle is that we, at least in Christian churches, and I think in all of our faith communities, think that we need to concentrate on the security of our own community. We have to work on, getting people, doing the programs, doing the things in our churches so that people keep coming to us. And we just don't have the time to do stuff that doesn't get people to come to us. That's one obstacle. The second one, and I will expand it just a little, is we live in a culture of fear and mistrust that we're being taught, and so everything that looks different and sounds different and is not what is familiar to our little circle is we approach very tentatively and with a lot of fear, and we've got to work on that culture of fear that's around us. For me also, we have to work on the idea theologically that only one tradition or one text or one holy prophet can have the truth. We've got to understand truth and the way the world was created in new ways, so that we can see that there is truth in all three of these traditions, and in every other religious tradition there are places to find the truth within everything. And to do that, again, the conflicts within our own faiths, within even the Presbyterian part of Christianity, are much greater than the conflicts between the Abrahamic traditions, and much harder to deal with. I've said I'm part of a threesome that studies the holy texts of Mormonism, Islam, and Christianity. And it is much easier to challenge my two other friends in that Bible study group than it would be for me to sit down with other Presbyterians that don't hold the same view that I hold. It's much harder for us to deal with our differences within our own small group than it is to share the differences that we have in different, and why would that be? But I know the same thing is true in Islam, and I know the same thing is true within the sects of Judaism. So those are the conflicts and the ideas. We've done an Interfaith Day Camp. We've done joint High Holy Day, Passover, Good Friday services. There were 4 of them. Let me see if I can remember the other 2. Oh, as I said, I have this wonderful friends. One is a Mormon woman and an Islamic gentleman and myself, and we have met for years every month to study an idea and learn what each 3 of the holy texts that we read say about that idea. And we have become such deep friends that you develop a relationship, like you do all the times, a relationship of trust. The more you know someone, the more you've grown to know them, the more you trust them, so that we can ask each other the really hard questions. We can challenge each other. You can't feel like you almost feel too afraid to ask a question for someone that you don't know very well, because you don't want to offend. You don't understand how that person might receive it. So you've got to start building those relationships early on, and we do it. I want to see it happen with children. They go to school together. They ought to be able to have a place where they talk about their three faith traditions together and how similar they are. The other one was, as Ali said, just visiting other communities. You can go anytime on Friday afternoon to prayer at a mosque, and they will welcome you with open arms. Or Friday night to Sabbath services. They will welcome you with open arms. So those are the ideas that I came up with.
Thank you.
I want to add one other thing,
Well-
because she touched on it. Can I just do that really quickly? It has become more and more clear to me as I have come to this clergy path rather late in my life, that the people I am most aligned with amongst community leaders are other faith leaders, not just from my own tradition, but from all traditions. I have more to say to Ali, I think, than I have to say to my own co-religionist, Ron Wyden. Not that I can't talk to Ron Wyden, but I'm not going to have the same heart conversation with him that I might have with you. And to me, that's a revelation that I think opens up a whole doorway that's important. I've become very close to Barbara, and by the way, that happened not just because we're in the same church, and not just because some happy accidents happened along that path, but also because I was actively encouraged by my ordination program to pursue that. I don't know if that happens in other places, but my comparative religion class, which everybody takes, wasn't called comparative religion. It was called deep ecumenism. That's a term of art, but what it really means is, what my teacher told me is, you don't pass this class unless you have a relationship with some other clergy of some other faith. I'd love to see that idea everywhere. You did. I did.
Bruce, I think I've known you too long, so pardon me for revealing anything that you don't want revealed. But you started this path of interfaith communication when you married Ruth, your first wife, the mother of your three children, and she's very traditional Lutheran. And that's when Andy and I met you, and we started our interfaith relationship about 30 years ago, and would have these massive Passover dinners at each other's house, and the Easter Bunny came in.
This is a true story.
Or we left, one time Passover was on a Friday night right before Easter, so we left Passover partway through, went to Ruth's church to Good Friday services, came back to Passover and finished the Seder. So there's a lot of humor there, but there's also a lot of intertwining, and I think Bruce mentioned that interfaith marriages have perhaps watered down some religions, but I would say the opposite is also true, that it has strengthened a lot, because in my household, yes, I think many interfaith couples, one is stronger in their religion and the other one is recessive. There's a dominant and recessive. In my household, we're two alpha males, and we all do everything. We do Passover, we do Hanukkah, or we do Passover, we do Easter, we do Hanukkah, we do Christmas, we do High Holy Days. And it gets to be a lot of work. And I oftentimes have said, it would just be easier if he weren't Jewish. But it wouldn't be as rich or as wonderful. But so we're doing everything, and it's a lot of work. We have some humor, we open the door for the Easter Bunny on Passover, and it's pretty cool. And John Shuck was at that Passover where the Easter Bunny came in, because he made his 25th anniversary appearance, and Barbara was there, yeah. So we did it 25 years ago, and then we had a 25th anniversary party with the Easter Bunny on Passover. Different house, looked like the same Easter Bunny. So,
Questions?
yeah, I don't want to take up, so questions and comments and just a big group discussion. Yes, sir.
First off, I have to say that I started the faith path that I'm on now from New York, and I want to thank you for what you've done. But in the Jewish community, community is very, very important. And with the community aspect of the congregations and congregants, it can be close. It can be close and seem close to people on the outside. They don't know very much about Islam. I suspect that Islam faces the same situation. How do you get the doors open up so that we still have community, but we are open to those that are not part of our community?
So the question was, since community is so important in perhaps most religions or faiths, how do we open the doors to include others?
I'm just think part of what people, it's a tight community, but it's also a community that has its own traditions and rituals. And so for me, it's making a place where it's easier to come into rather than walking into a church where there's, everybody's in their own place to sit, and everybody is using a hymnal with music that I've never heard before, and everybody knows when to stand and when to sit. And so for me, it's finding other ways, other places to be community, like in a coffee shop, or a mission project that you invite the community to join you in, or other things that bring the community together, but not necessarily expecting it all to happen on Sunday morning when we are at our tightest as a community with all of our rituals and all of the things we've done for so long.
I think it is very important really to have an open house and be open to everybody, and that's what we have. Our policy is many times we have, as I mentioned, many students taking some religious classes. They want to have a project and to see about our ritual and things like that, and so it's really very important for us, really, not for only our community, but for the others really to know about Islam. The more the people know about you, the more they feel comfortable, and then they would trust you and things. I know that there are incidents here and there, and you hear from the media and all of these things, that really makes you a little bit hesitant to start anything. But we have an open policy, and don't hesitate really to come, ask a question. And many people, they don't really know the tradition or what to say or what to do, what to wear sometimes and things like that. We don't really have any restriction in any of that other than just being dressed not revealing in a revealing manner, and our center is open to anybody, and we tell them if there is a red line or something like that to cross, for instance, like men and women do not really hug or shake hands really out of respect for the woman, to be honest, for, taking even the slightest thought of lust, So these are some of the basic things, but other than that, we are open, and we love to have the people, just like any other, they love to talk about their religion and what it stands for and all that. We have the same thing, and especially, when people do not really know about your religion, and they are really surprised.
By the way, I just want to point out real quickly, he mentioned about, don't go up and shake somebody's hand with the opposite sex. this is also true in Judaism, not in my community, in the more liberal traditions, but if you go over to Chabad, don't go offer to shake the Rebbitzin's hand if you're male. Bad idea. No.
The Rebbitzin would be the
The
rabbi's
Rebbitzin,
wife.
the rabbi's wife. So it's really, it's the same thing, and it's out of that respect of, you know, let's not introduce any kind of lustful thoughts. It's exactly the same. I wanted to specifically answer, because as you were saying that, I went to the very practical, what can you do? And the first thing I thought is ushers. Right? In your tradition, you usually have ushers. We don't, but you do. When somebody comes in who you know is not a member of the community, you don't have to necessarily embarrass them. You certainly want to go and say hi, but then maybe somebody could go over to the pastor or whoever's the faith leader for the day and say, hey, there's somebody new, you know? Just so that we know that that's there and we can tailor in the moment what we're saying. I'll cut back a lot of my Hebrew if I know I've got a bunch of people who don't know Hebrew. It's important, okay? I could go on, but I think it's just little things like that. Well, I know what I wanted to say. The other thing is, what makes a community, what makes an in-group that makes us feel like we're all together and we know each other well, that's the very same thing that tends to exclude other people. So you've got, and it's genetically made. So it's really hard to do that. The tighter your community is, the harder it is to penetrate. But I think if we realize that, we can be more open. We just need to know that that's an issue.
I've gotten in trouble so many times for calling it the foyer instead of the narthex, because people at St. Mark's like, come on, it's our narthex is our special word, and I'm like, but people don't, if they've not been here, they don't know where that is. Call it what it is. It's a foyer. Anyway.
First John and then Linda and then John.
I have one celebration and then one question. And celebration is, we talk about interfaith gathering, and it's the students that put together the Ramadan Time Project that they got from London and brought it over to the United States, and it's in the second year. It was very exciting to watch these young Muslim students gather together, and actually the first year they had it in our backyard of our church. And so it was an opportunity more that I've ever had more than any, of being able to recognize the diversity and the excitement of young people and their faith and their commitment to peace and justice, and it was really exciting. And one thing that happened is that one person gave a call to prayer, and it was just beautiful to hear it just ring out through the neighborhood. Except one person didn't like it, called the cops. He said it's a call to war, but you know that's a call to war. And that is the kind of stuff that we got to speak up against. Whether it's talking like that or within, however that conversation comes up, to recognize and talk about the truth of the humanity and the depth and the complexity that we have. My question to the panel, because I have a hard time with this myself, what success stories have you had in dealing with the tough issues in interfaith? Whether they're theological or political issues, what are success stories you've had in talking with people beyond just the surface getting to know one another? And I would have a hard time answering if somebody asked me that one, so I got that.
The one small moment of success that I remember most clearly was at the end of our first Abraham's Tent day camp, when we had Penaor and a nearby mosque and St. Mark cooperated together. And of course, we had preschool through junior high age at the camp. It was a small camp of only about 40 to 50 children, but we had those ages represented. And of course, for the teenagers, it was a little bit different experience than for the little ones. The little ones didn't, they couldn't tell the difference between anybody that was there. They just played together. But the older we got, the more there were questions and the more kind of holding back, not knowing exactly what to say, not wanting to offend, not knowing how to ask the questions. But they worked hard all week and wrote the story of Abraham, Isaac, and Ishmael to read as a story at our final presentation, which was wonderful. But what happened was the last day, we couldn't find them anywhere. It was sort of like, what happened to the teenagers? Group of about 6 or 8 of them. And we had had some free time, so we knew they'd sort of been off doing something. And we found them in one of the corner classrooms in the back of the church someplace, in a circle on the floor with their heads together, sharing their Facebook pictures with one another. And for me, they had become, they'd found that relationship where they'd all just become teenagers together, and it didn't matter. And that's what we were hoping would happen. And that's what we want to start building at a young age. As when those children grow, they will at least stop to question when they hear other people assuming that everything Islam is to be feared. Can you think of other ideas that? I mean, our putting together Passover and Good Friday was a bit of a challenge at first, but
And now
that's
we do
a
it all
long
the time.
story.
That's a long story, which I think we told last time. But I just want to say that sounds like it's both a small victory and it's a huge victory. That those small interactions mushroom into the kinds of places and things that happen so that I don't wind up sitting in a hot tub going like, what do you mean Jews control Hollywood, right? None of those kids will ever say that because they are now inoculated. When they hear that stuff, they'll go, what are you talking about? Again, this guy I met wasn't anti-Semitic. It's just what he heard, and it's what runs around in his community, and he didn't know any better. That's the way you stop that.
Yeah, I think every time you talk to somebody and clarify really a point or a misconception, that's really a success by itself. You know, when people say women are oppressed, and when they know the position of women in Islam, they just open their eyes, they didn't really know that. I'll give you an example. Do you know that women in Islam, they are not obligated to clean house, to cook for their husband, to feed, to breastfeed their kid, their baby, if they ask for money from their husband? That's what Islam teaches. But Islam also tells them that if you do these things for your husband, who is obligated to bring sustenance to the home and house, you know, God will bless you and God will double reward for you and things like that. And it will create a better bond between you two. So that's what really Islam teaches. You know, so people do not really understand these things. And one time they asked the Prophet, a person, he said, who is really more respectful between my mom and my dad? He said, your mom. And then he said, who else? He said, your mom. And he said, who else? He said, your mom. And he said, who else? He said, your dad. So the concentration of the respect of women in Islam is really great. You know, there's a misconception about women have to dress, you know, cover herself and things. The cover is really for her protection. You know, people when they talk to a person, rather than looking at their body, they want to look in their eyes and talk to their brains, rather than, you know, looking at some revealing things or something that would really deviate them from the true conversation and things like that. So anytime we clarify these misconceptions, this is really a success for us. And things start with little one. As a Chinese proverb says, that the 10,000 miles starts with the first inches of first foot. So that's where we go. Thank you.
So we have right here in front, and then, I'm sorry, Linda.
Perceptions about Islam, and I would like to tell you what they are,
Okay.
and you correct them for me.
Okay.
Is this okay?
That's fine. By the way, there's no taboo on questions on Islam, so feel free to ask any question.
Well, one of the perceptions that I have is that you are not allowed to question the Quran
Well, it is really true if you know that some of these things are not exaggerated in. In other words, Islam, what does Islam means? A follower of Islam has to believe in that God is one, that it's a unique creator that we cannot really comprehend and really understand, but we have to believe in him. Second thing, that we have to believe in the Quran and what it says from rules and things like that. The third thing is that what the Prophet did and what he told, the Muslims to do as a rule, But if you want to say, in the books that they're being collected and being written about the Prophet and some of the traditions and things like that, there are many things that are not really true in any book of these books. It's not the Quran. The Quran is the true word of God that was revealed to the Prophet, and it did really not come in one time. It didn't. Our Gabriel used to come to the Prophet, and he used to tell him, this is verse so-and-so of chapter so-and-so. For 23 years, our Gabriel comes to the Prophet and tell him, this is a verse so-and-so, and let your disciples, write it down and things. So they collect it. Islam, I'm not going to make that claim, is the only religion per se that has some historical documentation. Islam is since its birth. In other words, when Islam came to light and the Prophet Muhammad used to start preaching and things like that, people start documenting things. There's witnesses. There are all of these things. And how do you, if you want to believe in a person, how do you believe in him? When you believe in him that he's a good person, his morality is way beyond anybody else, and he is also commanded and chosen by God. We as Muslims believe that all the prophets that God sent, from starting with Adam and Noah and Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and we say peace be upon them, we consider them as infallible. Infallible means they did not really commit sins. Even Adam himself did not really commit sins in our belief. He did not really take the advice. God told him, you are in paradise here, and you can eat and drink and everything, and enjoy life, but don't touch this tree, and don't listen to Satan. Unfortunately, Adam did not really follow that advice. And we consider it as advice that he didn't take because, like somebody tells you, okay, don't eat too much meat, too much cholesterol, or don't smoke, you might get cancer and things like that. And another good example is really, you remember the story of Jonah. Jonah, God asked him to go and preach for that city. And Jonah believed in himself. He said, those cities are not going really to believe. Why should I go? He decided on himself not really to go and preach. And you know what happened to Jonah? The storm and things like that, and the whale, things. So Jonah did not really want to disobey God, but the advice he thought on himself, on his own, that he cannot really preach those people and they're not going to believe. But God proved him otherwise. So he went later on and he converted almost 100,000 people to worship God. So that's what really Islam is. And Muhammad, from the documentation, he's been an example of moral behavior. And he was called the trusted one in Islam. So if you want to really have respect to someone that's appointed by God, you have really to think of him as a good human being with good morality and things like that. So that's why we say all the prophets have really high morality, the good behavior, and they are very faithful. None of them committed a sin. So unfortunately, I'm not really trying to compete here. Like in the Old Testament, you have many examples. Like, for example, David had to send his general commander of the army to the battles so that he would marry his wife, or Noah sleeping with his girls and stuff. These are prophets. How could somebody follow somebody that's not really example? So that's why there is certain things, between us. David, Solomon, all of them, they were given miracles, to perform to convince people, and they are the best people of their time, and they came with the message. So that's why we have all respect. So that's why we say, peace be upon them. When we mention Jesus, peace be upon him, Moses, peace be upon him. And Moses is mentioned about 45 times in the Quran, and Muhammad is mentioned only one time. So this is how much, because they all preach the same message. Islam means peace and also means submission to God. So that's why in the Quran, when it says Jesus is a Muslim, Abraham is a Muslim, means that he committed himself to God, to the worship of God. But later that name become anonymous with Islam, because they believe that you submit yourself to God, and also you believe that Muhammad is the prophet.
So, but excuse me, I'm going to interrupt. And I want to share the wealth of questions around. And I also had promised Linda to speak, and I went out of order. So we can come back. We can come back to you, but others have questions too.
One of the things that has been noted is that there's greater diversity and perhaps contention within our traditions than at times between our traditions. Our congregation has had some good experiences with study, with visits, and we found, as Barbara has articulated and others, that when we began to say, how would we worship together, that is a far trickier conversation. Our congregation recently had an experience with the Children's Sabbath, inviting Sufi Universalist community to come and share that day, recognizing that within our North American society, increasingly, sharing between generations for all of our traditions is a much more loaded conversation, and is that place very much between faith communities and a growing, it's too much trouble, we'll just let them grow up and figure it out on their own at some other time, some other way. And so we're offering for our Children's Sabbath, we coupled with this community who has a profound sense of honoring a number of traditions and reading from a number of sacred traditions. And then after that, had a profound conversation about what feels as though it fits us well, and what feels as though it is just almost too tricky a ground for us to navigate at the moment. Study came out very high. You would not be surprised that Presbyterians say, we can study anything. But the other thing that came out very high, with all 6 generations, 4 generations of adults, 2 generations of children, the little kids just play, the middle school and high schoolers start thinking about things, and that's a different kind of formation. And then our 4 generations of adults, 20s and 30s, 40s and 50s, 60s and 70s, and increasingly in large numbers in our congregations, 80s, 90s, and 100, which might be another generation. They all said, what we
I serve on a number of community interfaith groups. We are doing, since you mentioned the Max line, the Interfaith Council of Greater Portland is joining together with a new group called Interfaith Clergy Resistance, which is a very focused group dealing mostly with how to respond, since the election, with how to respond to public gatherings and police reaction to public gatherings. But anyway, those two groups together are going to hold workshops on public intervention, de-escalation of violence, and a couple mindfulness trainings. 4 trainings, $50 per person for each training, but we're putting them out there for the community, interfaith community, for people to know what to do if they're in a situation where they're trying to intervene in a violent, know what to say, and also how to react physically. And those interfaith groups do a lot. The Interfaith Council of Greater Portland does mission projects all the time. We have a Christmas party that we give at a transition housing for Ethiopian and one other country, I can't remember, refugees. I mean, there's all sorts of things that we do together, and we're from all different faith communities. The teenagers at our camp do mission in the summer. They get in the bus and take off out of sight and work together in the community. I forgot to mention that part, but I don't know. Cantor and St. Mark have some shared mission projects where we collect food or we collect books for Christmas presents, but we've never physically gone out and built a house together or anything.
So I'm gonna confess, I think we just got challenged in a really good way.
Yeah.
We've done study together. I don't think we even thought about doing mission together. What a great idea. Thank you.
Witnesses to the world, something different
Yeah.
than the animosities between religion that is part of that caricature of it's too much bother, we're better off with a secular society that can do good without you guys.
Yeah. Well, we could do that together, couldn't we? I mean,
Well, I think Islam really gives a good example. Islam is the only religion that believes in all the prophets and who they are and things like that.
exactly.
So it's really no problem with the Muslim to talk about that. So all the prophets, they're mentioned in the Quran, all the praise. There's really a good chapter about Mary and the birth of Jesus, peace be upon them, and how beautiful this is and the miracle he did and all of these things. So people, if they understand that, they directly think that there shouldn't really be any animosity between Muslims and the Christians. Just out of the respect that of the prophets that mentioned in the Quran and all that stuff. So these are the things that really help out really to understand each other.
You are interfaith by nature.
Right.
I mean, you have been all since the beginning.
Exactly.
I just want to point out, by the way, that in Judaism, we're talking about one of the easy ways to get together, and it's a little bit difficult to do prayer together. Yeah, but we can eat together. In Judaism, if you're a student and you have a choice between studying and go to prayer, Talmud is very clear. Study. Right. In fact, there are a whole bunch of strictures that you can break if you are a student to, pray quick. You're not really supposed to eat in the prayer hall, but if in typical in most old Jewish congregations, there'd be just really one big building, right? And so the prayer hall was also the study hall. If you're not supposed to eat in there, but wait, you've got to eat. Eat there. If you're going to study, eat, be quick about it, get through the prayers, and then get back to your books. So there are ways that we can cooperate. Study's one, and mission. I'm really excited about this. Why didn't I think about that? It's a great
Well,
thing.
in our congregation's reflection on what was true to who we are, to let blood traditions go deep in who they are, but connect not just at the surface, not the lowest common denominator, but at our deepest. Deeply in all of our tradition is to serve the world with the kindness that we have received, and to make the world woven in a greater degree of peace. And so people felt they could go more deeply in their own tradition and participate in mission together than they could work on a surface level of just dabbling in what do we know about each other, and yes, what we hold in common, but we're deeply respecting our differences and allowing each tradition to operate from its deepest levels.
You know, one of my teachers who's in the room today said to me years and years ago, what you're supposed to be doing in this world is finding out where your great skill meets the world's great need. Thank you, Pam.
So,
And it occurs to me that this is a place where we have something as people of faith that we can give to the world together that is unique.
I just want to bring up too that when I was telling about how the uniqueness, why we would not want to meld into one religion. You see the uniqueness about the way that we study texts. These guys were brought up to think you're supposed to debate everything, right? Christians will debate everything. We try to figure out who's right and wrong a little bit too much, but we study things, try to get more cognitively. We'll try to find truth, see what's really true. These guys just debate for the sake of debate, but Islam reminds us that we have to believe, that we can't just debate. We have to see the holiness of our words and hold on to the truth. Without the three of us, it would be a much more, we'd be losing so much.
so I saw some hands earlier over here. I know there's two over here, but okay, Roberta, and then right with the white on. Yes, please.
So before we lost your thread, I wanted to go back to the Abraham's Tent Interfaith Day Camp.
This lady is one of our main teachers at the camp.
To highlight the theme of that week, which was the last week we had a couple summers ago, was Guardians of the Earth. That's all of us. And guardians is a verb in this case. And so I had this help with the youngest group, and then there was a middle group, and then a group out into the world every day. And they worked hard with teenagers. And so even though the youngest group was out in the world, we were giving them the foundation of what it would mean, even though it was a study. And we used recyclable materials, and we used things that could be reused. So we already have this. Please, and I am statements. We are all guardians of the earth. And I would hope the board of Abraham's Tent, even though we as an Interfaith Day Camp, even though we might call it something else, we are still all guardians of the earth, and then the peacemaking camp.
Yeah.
So
Thank
we
you.
definitely are a mission in Abraham's Tent.
Roberta.
Thank you. I may be the only person that needs to ask this question, but Ali, I know how to address a Christian pastor. I know how to address a rabbi. If I approach a cleric, what is the appropriate way to address that person?
Just come
Do
and
they
talk.
have a title?
No. Just come and talk to him. That's all you need to do. You don't really have to be a conservative or liberal or any of that. Just come as you are. Say I want to talk to you and I have questions or I have this and that, and then they will come. It's not that they're afraid of women or or any of that stuff.
Can you explain what an imam is, though?
Imam?
Imam?
Imam is any person who leads the prayer for a group of people is called imam, because he is, imam means like a leader of the prayer. That's all. And imam in Islam, if somebody wants to lead the prayer, he has to be just a person, he has to be religious, not that he goes and drinks and then he comes and the prayer and he wants to lead the prayer, no. because in Islam, Islam teaches you, he who wants to lead you, you have to look into that person. Is he worthy of being a leader or not? And that's where you.
But not a lot of theological training.
No, it doesn't really have to, because it says when people pray in congregation, the blessing is more rewarding than you pray by yourself. So that's why congregational prayer on a Friday is more. And there is a tradition or a saying of the Prophet saying, if about 7 or 8 or 9 people pray together under one imam, the blessing and the reward is not being measured, And having said that, this shows that the human beings are ready to work hard in order to get the reward.
So let's take one more question here and then maybe some closing remarks from you folks.
Yes, we have, because we have a diverse group. We have from Arab wars and from Muslim wars, like from Pakistan, India, Iran, Palestine, Bangladesh, Lebanon, Iraq. So we have a diverse group, and the new generation is coming speaking English more than Arabic or their own languages. So that's why we decided to do all our services in English. And of course, talking about Islam and things, lots of times you speak Arabic words because of the Quran and the expression that's been done.
And he asked about also
Yeah,
a lot of Hebrew.
there's a lot of Hebrew, but it depends. In the more liberal traditions, there'll be much more English. And it's typical to see English. I have to say, by the way, when I spent a semester in Jerusalem, many of the places I went, there was a lot of English, right? They speak Hebrew natively. There was a lot of English. So,
My
By
experience.
the way, just one second. When you do your prayer, it have to be in Arabic. When you read the Quran, it have to be in Arabic. You read the translation in English, but the basic version of the Quran is really the Arabic. That's where the revelation came. And the Quran has been there since 1400 years, never changed, never been reviewed or anything like that.
In many movements of Judaism, when you go to temple, to synagogue, the prayer book that's used has it written in Hebrew, which I can't read, and then it has the transliteration, and then often has the English translation. So I can typically read the transliteration, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, and that's all written in transliteration. But then there's also an English translation that I can go, oh, that's what it says. So I oftentimes in synagogue can follow along.
Just for point of information, as far as the time of worship, for the Jewish faith, it begins on a Friday night or Saturday. And for the Muslim, it is what they
It's Friday day.
Friday.
Our services.
There's a synagogue, there's a mosque just down about maybe 8 blocks down from where I live. It's a very small one. And I see them gathering there, but I haven't been able to track exactly what day of the week that they gather there.
Yeah, well, the prayer for Muslims, I said congregation prayer is encouraged all the time. We pray 5 times, 5 times a day. But
More than once a week.
right. Some mosques, they are really open 5 times, during the prayer, like in the morning, early in the morning, noon, afternoon, sunset, and after dark. So they come to the mosque on these things and they pray. Normally Friday being the like a holiday, you see, and the day in Islam is measured with the night and then the day. Like Friday night, Friday night will be Saturday, part of the Saturday rather than it's a Friday. Friday, when it sunsets, it's all done. And then you started the Saturday night and then the Saturday day. So that's how they, and you remember from the New Testament about Jesus, stayed nights. They count nights and days. You see? Yeah.
So do you want to each take a few seconds or moments and give some parting thoughts? Pearls of wisdom.
Yeah, I would like to say something. Probably you heard about ISIS, you heard about terrorist activities and all of these things. These are not really representative of Islam. Those people who acted like this are not Muslims. One of the principles of our belief is the justice of God. God told the Prophet Muhammad in the Quran, you see about 10-15 times telling Muhammad, you have no control on anybody, you only a warner and a guidance, and you are not. And there is no compulsion in Islam to convert people. And actually the Quran says, who are you to convert people or force people to follow your religion? So people have the choice really to follow. And we believe that God is just. And you could see if God wants really to make people all the same, he could have created the same thing. He would have created them. And God, he left us with so much knowledge here and information, created a law for us to follow. And he even himself respected those, and he's waiting for the day of judgment to judge all of us. So we can see that we have the population of this world is about 6-7 billion people. And many of us say there are some atheists that do not believe, some are robbers, some other things. But we don't really see God coming and punishing everyone that makes a mistake. He doesn't, But some people in our faith, actually, they think they are God-appointed people. They want to convert everybody to Islam, and they want to judge people who goes to heaven or goes to hell. I, as a Muslim, I don't have a green light to paradise. I wish, I pray, and do all my things. Hopefully, I will gain that. Hopefully, I will gain that. And you see many people, when they do supplication or pray, they cry because they are really afraid and things like that. Because we are really temporary on this earth. We live 70, 100 years or 110, but later on, this is what really God promised us. He said, I'm sending you messengers. That's my mercy on you, guidance to guide you and things like that, so you will have a big reward. That big reward is that your eyes didn't really see like it, your taste buds didn't even taste the food like it, and when we are as a human being here and we are eating some food, how long does it last? 10 minutes? And later on, if you put a whole meal in front of you, whatever, you wouldn't even look at them. But God is telling you, happiness is going to be continuous. So what we call here is a temporary happiness. When we eat something or enjoy some other thing. But there, God is telling you, you will have everything. You will enjoy everything. You will be happy, and it's eternal life. So all he said, follow the guidance of these prophets and messengers that I send you, and you will be rewarded. And it's up to your choice to take this temporary life, or you get the eternal life that you will live forever. So you do the calculations. So what I'm saying, those people do not represent Islam, and they are not Muslims. And unfortunately, there are some politics is playing in the whole thing, really, to make the Middle East like a havoc and lots of corruption, lots of stuff, things like that. And Islam is a religion of peace, and that's what we like to work on, and that's what we want to portray ourselves as. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
I want to reiterate what Ali said in terms of both. I think when we see the other or something we don't understand, we tend to think of those opinions as monolithic. All Muslims think one way. All Christians think another way. In fact, Catholics think this way, but Presbyterians have a different attitude. And all Presbyterians must think this way because they're not Catholics. We know that's not true. And yet it can be very difficult if we feel that something is sensitive, and especially where this is a belief that we think might be on the fundamental side of things, it's difficult to ask that question. It's difficult to approach. And I want to encourage you to approach just the way Ali was talking about it and answering it, and the way this gentleman here, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but the way he asked his question so respectfully, being worried that he might be offensive. I think that's okay. You can ask saying, you know, I don't even know the right words to say, so I hope I'm not embarrassing you. This is not uncomfortable. If you need to do that, that's fine, but I think those of us who are sitting here, and most people, even most fundamentalists, are so grateful for the question that they will answer. And I just want to very quickly give you a funny example. I had been studying with an Orthodox rabbi, and I don't know if you know this, but Orthodox women wear a wig, right? They don't show their hair. This rabbi's wife was gorgeous. I mean, I almost hate to say this, she's hot. It's just what it is. I'm sorry, I'm male. She's amazing. And she wears this wig that it makes her look beautiful, you know? And I finally had to ask him. I said, what's up with that? I don't get it, right? Because I thought the idea of the wig was to somehow control sexuality. Yeah, be covered. And he said to me, that's not the case. This is a pretty fundamentalist guy. He said, that's not true. It's not about sexuality. It's not about looking bad, you know, or looking less attractive. He explained to me that the hair is for him. That's an intimacy issue. But it doesn't mean his wife can't be good looking out in public. And he was quite proud of the fact that she was. Now, that was a difficult question for me to ask, as you can imagine. And he was right there with an answer. I would encourage you to ask those questions. That's how we break down the walls.
I'll just say that we have found at St. Mark, and I know through my own work in the community with interfaith groups, that there is no easier way to deepen your own understanding of the Christian traditions, of Christian scriptures, the Younger Testament, than to understand Judaism, to understand our Lord as a rabbi who studied Torah, and everything he said comes from Torah, and you can look it up and not just read it in his words, but find the words that he read, that he was reinterpreting for us in his way. That deepens and has deepened my own faith so incredibly. And had it not been that through providence, somebody walked in from Penaor shortly after I came to Penaor, out to St. Mark, and asked if they could share our building. Had it not been that several years later, their founding pastor died tragically in a scuba diving accident, and we grieved with them and held them up during a time of intense pain and grief for them. Had those experiences not been part of my ministry and my life, I would not be the person that I am today. And so I encourage you just to know that that is out there for you, if you want to enrich your understanding. I'm not a scripture and verse memorizer because my memory has never been good, and it's even worse now that I have a few gray hairs. But 2 Timothy 2:2. See, I can remember this one. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 2 says something like to Timothy that you have heard the message You have heard the messenger, you have heard the message. Now go and take that to others, that they may take it to others as well. And so I would just leave you with the idea that is our job is to share the message and put it out there so that it will continue to grow beyond this place.
Thank you so very much.
And continue the conversation in the hallways and everywhere.